guys, welcome back to another episode of the Pandemic Interviews. Today I'm talking to a gentleman by the name of Shannon Moore. Shannon has been a homesteader, a blacksmith, but he's also done a lot of research into Viking center grip shields. So thanks for joining me, Shannon. It's great to
Sure.
see you again. And I've been looking forward to our conversation because I've used the equipment you've made. And so I've been really excited about this one. You also had decided to start on a study of the center grip shield used in northern fighting styles. I'm trying to stay away, but I'm going to use the term Viking shields just because it's the most commonly recognized term.
It just makes things less complicated.
What made you decide to start your study of the Viking shield and the traditional construction?
Well, I guess it started with the paganism and me thinking, if you really want to understand the religion of these people, you have to understand the worldview of these people. So let's study these people. And then in studying these people, it doesn't take very long until you realize that martiality, right, is a huge part of their life. I mean, you could practically describe it as the cult of the sword or the cult of the spear, really, in terms of like Odin and all of that. And in terms of what most people used, it was actually a lot more the spear or axes, so there's this recurrent theme in ancient European cultures of martiality. And it's kind of funny because in years past, I've had a resistance to all of that sort of stuff. It's like, this is, a bunch of LARPing as warriors nonsense, and we live in the modern world, and who cares about that stuff? And, so I did end up eating a bit of crow in my becoming interested in that stuff. And so, I was watching something, I forget what, and they do the fantastic battle scene or they do the shield wall and all of that. And I was just like, wow, that's really interesting. I want to learn more about that. So I started learning about that stuff. And I realized that there was a lot of focus and attention and energy paid into swords, right? I learned that when I did blacksmithing at a historic farm, where every single little kid that walked up to me was like, "Are you making a sword?" And then I'd have to go, "No." And then they'd go, and leave. Just like instantly. It's like, well, then who needs you, buddy? Yeah. And I realized that like almost nobody talked about shields, and there really wasn't much even curiosity about shields. Like, you cut a circle out of plywood and you attach a handle to it and you get this little metal thing and screw it on the front and you're done. And I was like, well, that the Vikings didn't have plywood. So, what are these things really about? And that was when I started researching it and realizing that a lot of the things that people believe about shields are wrong. A lot of the things that people do with them are wrong. Even a lot of the history about them amongst people that care about such things is not correct. And that's always a tempting target to me, just that my personality is I like to challenge dominant paradigm assumptions that seem readily provably false. So
I think the term for that is troublemaker.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. I think that's probably fair. But I mean, I also think that there's no point in learning the wrong thing, and that can lead to all sorts of, well, I mean, your whole, well, not your whole career, but a huge part of your career is keeping people from picking up bad habits, So if you go shopping for shields, like on, say, eBay, you'll see a bunch of plywood shields that have a bunch of big metal decorative stuff.
I happen to have one here. Look at the
There you go.
thickness of that thing.
Yeah,
Now,
that's
this
enormous.
is a chunk of like 1/2 inch thick plywood.
Yep.
Got the boss.
Yep.
But it's been set up as a
Right.
strap shield, not a center grip.
Which doesn't make much sense.
But the thickness of this, good 1/2 inch thick, at least.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that if you try to fight with this thing, you are going to blow out your shoulder pretty soon.
Yeah.
The guy that owns this one, he's a big dude. He can get away with it. Me, you, we're not going to. We're going to need something that's not as beefy. Why do you think people make them like that?
Well, because making them the correct way is a lot of work. because they don't know better, and because of misconceptions. So the thing I was just getting to is if you look on eBay, you find shields like that, and you find shields like that that also have these big metal elements stuck to the front of them, like big bands around the edge and through the middle, and the ad for the shield will often brag about how heavy it is, as though that's an asset. What you want is this big sturdy slab for blocking, right? And ideally your shield, someone could be able to chop away at it with an axe for 8 hours straight and it would still be fine, because it's just so big and massive. And that's not at all what a shield was, sort of like some of those old sword movies where it's like the one where Arnold Schwarzenegger takes the sword and hacks the chain in half on top of a rock, and all of us that know everything about swords just go, oh. But to someone that doesn't know any better, that's like, wow, that's a good sword. Look at that. He just beat a rock with it.
And to be completely honest, that's not a new concept. No. I remember a story about a meeting between Richard I and Saladin, where Richard, talking about the strength of the European sword, hit an anvil and broke it, where Saladin threw up a silk scarf and held his saber out and just split the scarf. So that concept of bigger, heavier is better is not a new thing, but it's not accurate.
No, it's completely wrong. And one thing I was going to say is about your large, well-muscled friend that owns that shield is, you said he can get away with it, but I would suggest that he's not really getting away with it. It's really, it's hurting his ability to perform, because if it were half the weight that it is, a big beefy guy would be able to move it even faster and block faster. And like a conversation we had at this point probably 2 years ago, just the weight of it will change how you use it, and that will shift. So it's not really a question of if you're strong enough, it's a question of you wouldn't make a sports car as heavy as an F600 pickup truck just because there's an engine in it that's big enough that it could push it, because sure, you could get away with it, but it's still an inferior thing, right? Your sports car, you want it to be light and fast, So anyway, yeah.
So one of the things that you've done, and I have an example of some of your work right here, is you took a plank shield, like that one down there, smaller diameter, but still a chunk of plywood.
Yeah.
And then you did work to this to thin it out and change the shape of it.
Yeah.
And you changed the handle as well, I believe.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what it was like working on a plank shield and turning it into something more akin to a real shield?
Yeah. So right, that's my first shield. When I wanted to learn about this stuff, I think that's kind of where all the trouble started. Was I found that at a garage sale, and it was like $10 or something like that. And I thought, okay, well, I'm kind of learning about this stuff. I can't pass it up. I might as well get it. And it was what I call an SCA shield. You know, it had a metal rim around the edge, and then it had a rubber bumper on top of that. And yeah, it had this big, thick, meaty handle on the back of it. And I started playing around with it, and I was like, this thing is like a brick.
Yeah.
It's not big enough to like make into a shield wall, and it's too heavy to like swing it around like you would a buckler, you know. And it just occurred to me, it's like, this can't be the way it's supposed to be. And you know, you'll get comments, so I'm going to say it. There are some valid reasons in the SCA for why you want a big, thick, meaty shield like that, and it has to do with the SCA rules of combat, and you know, the fact that basically all of their swords are used as blunt striking objects rather than edged weapons. And you know, that's fine, that's for them. But so I got that thing, and I thought, okay, well, first of all, this thing does not really need to be 1/2 inch thick. So why don't we try scraping down the edges?
That was 1/2 inch thick?
Well, I can't remember. Whatever the plywood is at the center by the boss, is that 1/2 inch?
Ooh. Actually, it might be, which means that this other one is more like 3/4 of an inch to an inch thick.
Yeah, it might be 5/8, but
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, that thing was like a 1/2 inch slab, and I was like, there's no reason for this edge to be 1/2 inch wide. It doesn't protect. It doesn't add anything to it. So I took off the metal strip and I took off the rubber strip. Like, what can I do to make this thing as light as possible and still work? And then I basically opened up a circular saw, and I'm not suggesting people do this, but I opened up a circular saw, and there's a video of me doing this on my YouTube channel in case I'm not explaining it well. And with the guard open, just sort of ran it back and forth across the back of the shield so that it planed. I basically used a circ saw as a planer, you know,
Right.
and tapered it down to the edge. And I think I ended up taking about, gosh, I don't remember, several pounds of weight off of it. And it's much more usable now in terms of, you know, active striking and stuff like that. The problem with a really heavy, thick shield is that it makes you want to use it statically. You hold it and swing and then use it to kind of block. And really, those shields were as much about striking as they were blocking. It's actually, my big aha moment was when somebody said, or when I read somewhere, a shield is not a piece of armor, a shield is a weapon. And that was when I went, oh, this is why everything is being done, because we just have this mentality that it's for blocking, and that's only a part of it, you know.
I reference in my videos over and over again, this is not a door.
Yes.
You're not hiding behind it. This is more like boxing.
Right. Now the Roman ones, I mean, the Romans had round shields, but like the classic square half circle ones that you see in the movies all the time, that thing, those are more of like you hide behind it, come out, strike, like that, and it's because they weigh a freaking ton compared to round shields. But yeah.
Or like with the 15th century pavis that was used by the Genoese crossbowmen as a door to hide behind to respan your crossbow.
Yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable. Sure, it's not like you're going to hit somebody with it, then run away, fire the crossbow, and yeah. So yeah.
Different shields have different reasons,
Yeah,
but it sounds like what we're seeing a lot of is the mentality that a shield is a shield is a shield, even though each one for its design has its own reason and its own purpose.
sure, yeah. Yeah, and that was one thing I really learned from, coming to your school and talking to you guys, because all I'd studied up to that point was Viking shields.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, actually, what I learned at your school is that these things, they all evolve as a package. There's a reason why you don't have a Viking round shield and a sword with big long quillins. There's a reason why the sword that went with the big round shield has almost nothing protecting your hand, because that's what the shield does,
Yeah.
Or there's a reason why by the time they go to full plate armor, the shield is all tiny and small, because it doesn't have to protect your whole body. That's what the armor's for. So, these things sort of come as packages, and they're designed to serve different functions. And yeah, exactly. You don't just mix them interchangeably.
Right, which is a easy and a common thing to do, and a danger as a researcher that we need to make sure that we pay attention to, and we don't fall into that trap as a researcher.
You're right. Right. Yeah, exactly.
So, what type of wood was a Viking shield traditionally or normally made out of? And was it a solid piece, or how'd they do it?
Well, that's an interesting question, actually. One of the things in the historic reenactment world, I guess, is that there are a lot of things that are just, they're true because people say them, except they're not really true, or they're treated as this is how it is, but when in reality, that's only partly true. So one of the examples is that Viking shields are made of linden wood. This one particular, the linden tree. And it turns out how, I have theories about why that's believed. And part of that is because the word linden is used in the literature when talking about shields. So, and because wood rots, there aren't a lot of wood samples of shields from like graves and stuff. There are some, but so it's just sort of believed that the wood you're supposed to use is linden wood. And in fact, if you look at a book like early Anglo-Saxon shields, almost none of them were, almost no evidence that linden was used. And a few shields, like the Sutton Hoo shield, for example, it's asserted in regular literature, well, it was made of linden wood, but then when you go and you actually read the book, like the source material, suddenly it turns into was probably linden. And then you look at, okay, well, what did they do to make this determination? So it turns out that the proof that the Sutton Hoo shield was linden wood is based on about 3 little rings of wood about this big that they found embedded in rust behind the shield boss. Because if you think about it, like if you buried a shield, all the wood would rot except for maybe some of it that was smashed up against that shield boss and basically protected by rust. So then they take that little disc and they look at it under a slide and they go, okay, well, the features of this type of wood is that it has X number of ray cells for every blank cells, and this wood looks like it's probably that. It's definitely not these. So I'm going to say it's probably linden. And you're
Best
like,
guess.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, it could be true that it probably was. So the researcher says this is probably lindenwood, or almost certainly lindenwood, and so here's the thing. If you've read in the literature that shields are made out of lindenwood, and then you put it under the microscope and it looks like it could be lindenwood, your brain is going to say, okay, this is probably lindenwood, which is pretty reasonable, but that's not necessarily the case. And when you look at books like this, you find out that, you know, 11 of the shields are alder, 11 are willow or poplar, 3 are maple, 2 are birch, 1 is ash, 1 is oak, and 1 is lime, which is linden. That's the synonym. So 1 out of all of those lists. And then you go and it says probably, or might be, or we think it is. So it's sort of like, and it's interesting because in later years, linden became prized for its carvability, which is like, well, does that really sound like something you'd want to make a shield out of? Sure, it's light, but you don't necessarily want something that carves easily and doesn't, you know, good carving wood. I do wood carving. What makes it good is that it doesn't have a lot of grain resistance when you carve it. When you run a blade through it, the blade goes where you want it to go, not where the wood wants it to go, if I'm making sense. So yeah, it's not even that, it kind of doesn't make sense as a wood.
But it also sounds like out of that list of shields,
yeah,
3, maybe 4 were hardwood. Everything else was a softer wood.
Yeah, actually, that's another eBay misconception, so to speak, is you'll see them when they aren't making it out of plywood, they make it out of something like oak, and then they brag about that like that's good, and it's like, no, oak is heavy, and yeah, it doesn't make any sense to make a shield out of oak, really, because what you want is something kind of kite-like, really, you know, something that's very aerodynamic, lightweight, and yeah, that you can hurry, because you've got to catch that sword before it hits you in the face.
It's kind of important.
And you don't want to be like, ugh! No, you want as fast as possible, you know. So yeah.
And having been on the receiving side of a sharp sword with one of these shields, yes, you want your shield there.
That was an exciting video, yeah. And so here's another thing about, and I was just talking to a friend about, you have to be careful about the blind use of data. Another place in this book they talk about the width of the shield, and some of them are enormous, 36-inch wide, 38-inch wide shields, and then there's one that's like 14 inches, and they're all in the data pile for width of shield, right? So I saw this 14-inch wide shield and I went, well, that's weird. And so are these 38-inch ones. That's also weird because that's really big. I mean, way bigger than you need to protect yourself.
Right.
And 14 is tiny. So I went and I actually bought the antique periodicals from when they dug up this grave or that grave in the 1800s. And it turned out that the tiny little one was found in the grave of what they believe to be a 9-year-old boy.
Okay.
Not hard to guess what's going on there. And then all the extra wide ones were the ones that they pulled off of the ship burials.
So those were more like the ones that we see in the movies, like the Vikings, where they've got it along the bow of the boat.
And if what you want to do is hide behind it so you don't get an arrow in your neck while you're rowing, then yeah, as wide as possible. And I have some theories about those ship burial shields as well, we could rabbit trail in 1,000 different directions. But so the point is, like, maybe this oak shield, the one on this list, which constitutes 3.3% of the finds, was made specifically to bury with somebody. And they wanted a big, impressive, thick-looking shield that the guy was not going to ever have to fight with. Or they had extra oak lying around and were like, let's just use that stuff. So because they handmade all their planks, which is a lot of work. And that is another thing that feeds into that whole question about the disposability of shields, which is another one of these tropes that everybody just sort of believes, that doesn't really make much sense if you examine or think about it too long. So we could talk about that too.
Yeah, definitely. But before we get into that, and I really do want to, I want to talk about the process that you went through for making the shield. So you got planks and then you planed them. But well, tell us what you did.
Well, you buy the planks and you cut out your circle template and the boss hole, basically, and then you glue them together. And there's a whole discussion about glue that we could have too. I chose to start with hide glue, and I have various reasons why I picked that over Theophilus's 12th century milk glue recipe. But yeah, so I made hide glue, and then I glued all those planks together, so you've got like a big sort of donut shaped you know, flat piece of glued together planks. And then after that is when I file down the edges to you know, about 3/8 of an inch, I think. Yeah.
So I've got one here that you made, and it's a interesting one. One of the things that I find most interesting about it is this is not the normal shaped boss that you see on Viking shields. I gotta say, I really like these bosses.
They're fun, aren't they?
But what is this and why is it so different?
So the Anglo-Saxon, that's sort of, you know how we were talking about using Viking shield generically. There are actually some real differences between Anglo-Saxon round shields and Viking round shields. And one of them is that almost all Viking shields have that normal dome-shaped metal boss like you're used to, whereas the Anglo-Saxon shields pretty much all had a button. It's and often they didn't usually look like that. They were usually closer to the body of the boss, bigger like that. I've actually gone to the UK and seen a lot of them. And they were usually decorated, enameled, carved, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's why, is because I saw that and said, well, okay, clearly there's more utility to this thing than just your standard cone-shaped one. And why not buy these because it's an experiment and see what you can do with them. And, you know, like we had some fun in some of those other videos with like hooking the edge of the other guy's shield and pulling his arms apart from each other so you can get in the stab and all of that. So another reason is there's a lot of people that think that you use the shield to like stab somebody with the boss almost.
Oh, almost like punching them this way.
Yeah. And I wanted to see if that was really feasible. And other people think that you use the shield boss to like, the idea is the sword bounces off the face of the shield, runs towards the center, and then the button sort of grabs the sword. So I wanted to play with those different tactics, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to work with. And going back to this shield, one of the things that you were saying to me that you found is very important is the handle. And I want to take a look at the back of the shield for just a moment.
Yeah.
the handle is not centered. And
No.
everything we see on online, the handle is always right down the middle of this.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about that, and I also want to talk about that warpage.
Yeah.
Let's start off with the importance of the handle and why it's not centered.
Well, because your hand isn't really symmetrical, you know. If you grab something around like this, yeah, you only need to accommodate a small amount of room on one side for your fingers, but you need much more space for the hand. And as you rotate it through, like with your wrist.
Yeah, because if I do that, it's gonna break my knuckles and hurt me.
Yeah.
But just simply flipping it over gives me all that space, and I've got the ability to move my knuckles inside the boss.
Right. And in fact, the Anglo-Saxon shields, which I'm actually more familiar with and have studied a lot more closely than the so-called Viking finds, mainland finds, or yeah, well, it's just Anglo-Saxon versus Viking. Let's just keep it simple. They're all off-center like that. Well, I don't want to say all, but all the ones that come to mind are off-center. The only difference between that one and the Anglo-Saxon shields is that the Anglo-Saxon shields had a metal handle that was long and covered a lot of the back of the board with wood sandwiched on it. Okay, so here's another interesting thing. Of the shield finds and going back to linden wood, there is a lot more linden wood on the handles than there are on the body. And in fact, a lot of the shields have a linden wood handle and some other type of tree for the body. So whoever made that presumably had access to both and didn't use linden for some reason, you know. Hard to say why.
This one that I was just holding up,
yes,
it has hide on the face and the back.
Yes.
Hide around the rim, a wooden handle, but yes. the shield itself is kind of curling. Why?
Well, yeah, so planks, for one thing, want to warp, you know? Like if you just take a plank of wood that's that thin and throw it outside, or even even a 2x4, right? If you leave a 2x4 in your backyard long enough, it's going to warp. Yeah. So wood just wants to do that according to the grain. And I think, see, when they mill planks like the kind that I buy, they don't mill them, and I forget what the term is, along the grain the same way that the Vikings did their shields. The shields are cut along the grain in a specific way that is not typical for manufactured planks. And I think that why they did that is because of that problem, so that the wood doesn't want to warp as much. And also, I think it has to do with the hide glue and its susceptibility to either cracking under extreme heat or rehydrating under extreme moisture. And I was still working on figuring out how to beat the curve, so to speak. And that was another video I did, how to beat the curve, that involves me taking a bunch of weight plates, like from weightlifting, and weighing down the shield as it dries to get it to sort of form a lenticular shape. And then, sometimes it unbends anyway. Like the horsehide shield, the one you just held up, was flat for a long time. And then I think either warped right before you got it or right after. I can't
I
remember.
believe it was in your car, and the heat caused it.
Yeah, they are very sensitive to that. And I think that's part of why the Romans had shield covers, was to keep the elements away off the glue of their shields.
Much like knights in the Crusades would wear tabards over their mail to protect it from the sun.
There you go. Yeah, that would, right. Yeah. Yeah, so.
Have you found that the length of the handle, I mean, if it's too long or too loose, allows more warpage in the shield? Or do you cut the handle a little bit short to kind of force it to open up? How do you go about determining that?
Well, I think that maybe that might be part of why the Anglo-Saxons went through the trouble of making, because it doesn't make a lot of sense really if you think about it, especially given how valuable metal was back then, to make this big long metal thing that branches out in all these different places that you then stick on the back of the shield. It's not going to be blocking any sword blows. What is that thing for? It's to keep the shield from snapping if too much pressure gets put on it, I think. And I also think that's what keeps it from warping out of shape over time. So, you know, that's part of what I was experimenting with, is how little handle can I use.
Right.
And I also,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I also think that part of why the shields that did have an all wood handle have a different wood than the facing was because of that need too. You know, you want a strong hardwood, like maybe oak, for the handle, and then a softer wood for the face.
Now, this one you were saying is made out of horsehide.
That's
On
horsehide.
the face and the back. Is that true for the rim as well?
That's all horsehide.
Okay. And the hide glue, was that from horse as well?
I hide glue is made out. I have both goat hides and horse hides, and one of the things I was experimenting with is, does a thicker hide matter, you know? Or is the hide really just about keeping the wood together, and it doesn't, since it's glued down, or maybe it's not glued down. That's Ralph Warmer's, I believe his name is, his work where he made a shield and decided that that the hides weren't glued on at all. But dang, I lost my train of thought just then. Where were we?
Did they also use linen on the shield as well?
Oh, you asked me about the glue, right? Sorry. So yeah, the glue is made out of both goat and horse hide. And one of the reasons why I thought we should use hide glue instead of milk glue is because if you're like a warrior and you're going to raid and stuff like that, dead things are going to happen around you, you know, and you can make glue out of that anywhere. You know, when you kill something to eat it, like the goat, you've got scrap hide. When, you know, when you burn the guy's farm down, you've got dead livestock around. So there's always a supply of hide. That's not really true for dairy products. And if it is, you want to eat that because you're raiding and food is hard to find, you know, at least harder than being scavenger. So yeah, you can make hide glue out of any kind of hide. It doesn't.
How do you take a chunk of leather and make it into glue?
Well, I was just about to say, don't use leather. Not leather. You get gross, nasty things when you try making hide glue out of leather. You want to make it out of rawhide, and that's because what you're doing is you're cooking the collagen out of skin, and that collagen is sticky and likes to harden And leather is skin with all of that scraped out, right? So yeah, don't make hide glue out of leather. It's gross.
So it's
That's the thing.
so it's rawhide that you want to use.
Yeah.
Thanks for talking with us, Shannon. It was great to hear from you and great to find out about all your research that went into making the shields. If you liked the video, please hit the subscribe button below. Get notifications of new videos coming up. We have lots of great interviews as well as other videos on the use and practice of medieval and Renaissance martial arts. Thanks again and take care.